guys, welcome to the D2D Real Estate Show. We are going to dive into the personal life of Craig Whiting. It's important to know who you work with, and so we're going to ask Craig all kinds of questions that are personal so you guys can get to know him and know who you're dealing with. So Craig, I want to hear your story. I want to hear where you started, what got you into real estate. Let's just start there. What got you into real estate?
It sounds like you're going to pull some skeletons out of the closet here.
We are. A lot of deep ones. Are you ready?
Great. Well, I got into real estate because out of default. I graduated from my undergraduate degree in 2002 spring, but 9/11 happened just months before that. And so I actually had a job lined up with a semiconductor company up in Oregon. They had gone to several college campuses, interviewed hundreds of people, flew up like 4 or 5 candidates to Portland, and would put us through a battery of tests and interviews, and then they chose me. But then 9/11 changed the whole story. So I ended up graduating without that. They decided to not actually expand that department. It was a strategy analyst. And so I graduated with nothing. I went to work at a local bank in their loss prevention department, focusing on fraud. And then I'm sending out resumes like everywhere. I'm trying to use all the connections I have. I applied to over 60 jobs.
Wow.
And nothing. I mean, it was sort of the economy we were in at the time. Mm-hmm. And here's where, good grades weren't opening any good doors for me. And my network, my connections, I was tapped into, I think, pretty decent connections where I had really warm, introductions and still not getting anything. So I applied to a job on monster.com. Back when monster.com was, what the heck is monster.com anyway?
Right.
And
you're dating yourself now.
I'd say. And I got a job as an underwriter, a mortgage underwriter. And I didn't even know what that was, but it sounded interesting. And it was actually a job, and it was paying $3,000 a month, base salary plus some bonuses. So I got flown down to San Francisco and was in the Marriott there for 7 weeks of training to be a mortgage underwriter. And halfway into that experience, they pulled me aside and said, Craig, we decided we're going to make you a loan officer instead.
Wow.
And I thought, loan officer, that's like sales. I'm not a sales guy. But I didn't have any choice. So next thing I know, I'm on the phones as a loan officer doing sales. And whereas really wanted to just be behind the scenes and just doing whatever like that, not being this salesperson. But anyway, that's what happened. So it was sort of out of default or luck that I just got pushed into the sales side of things. But when you look at the poem from Robert Frost, where it says two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I took the road less traveled by. Mm-hmm. This was one of those monumental moments in my life, where I would have spent potentially the rest of my career in an operations aspect versus a sales side, and how blessed and grateful I am that company forced me to go into a sales type of a career. It's made the difference in the rest of my life. But anyway, so I go in as a loan officer, became a loan officer, and started doing well with that.
Wait, let's pause. So how long did it take you to take off as a loan officer and sell something you didn't want to do to start taking loans?
Well, so I was in a situation where they were feeding me a lot of the clients, mm-hmm. And which is part of the reason, even as a loan officer, I was getting paid $3,000 a month, and then I was making bonuses. I was crushing it. I was closing dozens of deals sometimes in a month with I was processing on top of being the loan officer. And I think my record was in the 70s or 80s in 1 month that I closed. I was working like crazy.
Wow.
And they were paying me like $100 a file or something as a bonus, something ridiculously small. But at the time I thought it was amazing. I made like $8,000 in one of these months. So I started really, really learning the loan process exceptionally well.
Well, way more than $3,000 that you were going to get paid before, right?
Yeah. So I was getting paid pretty well from that. And then what ended up happening is I was working in a retail branch of this lending company, and a loan officer who was a mortgage wholesaler came walking into my office thinking he was going to drop off a package for me to underwrite, thinking I was the wholesale side. And he and I had a conversation. He said, why don't you come over to the wholesale side of being a loan officer? You make a lot more money than if you were just on this retail side. But at that point, I would have to go into an environment where, I'm going to have to go off and find my own clients. And even toward the end of my time with this lender that I was at, instead of them giving me clients, rates ended up going up, and then they just gave me lists, and I was cold calling people and still doing really, really well. But I decided, okay, let's go into the wholesale side of things and go off as an independent contractor without being on anyone's payroll. And so I was about a year in as a loan officer, and then I jumped, where my wife and I made the decision, like, do we really want to do this where we're having to go make our own bread and succeed without someone just handing us a deal.
Right.
And so I did. And I did okay. I did all right. I didn't need much money to survive that time. I had a really young family, but I got into that world and started doing a lot of different marketing techniques like mailers and billboards and different things like that to create a business. And I was doing all right. And then another loan officer saw my knowledge and how I was really capable of doing loans. And so he actually hired me for $8,000 a month salary just to crank loans for him.
Holy cow.
And so here I was in my young or mid 20s, at $8,000 a month, which was, back in early 2000s. And anyway, so I just started doing really well with that and was just cranking loans. And he was spending tons of money on mailers, tons of money. And I was just closing tons of deals for him. And that was going great until I started getting a little bit more burnt out and thinking, I'm going to do this on my own again. So I chose to leave from him to go back to doing it on my own. And that was early 2007. And people will know that in that time, we started to see some shaky things happen in the economy, and then it went massively south. Now, during this time when I was making good money as a loan officer, I was out buying properties. And so I started to amass a good real estate portfolio, especially for a guy that was as young as I was.
Cool.
I had about 16 acres of land, and I had, multiple properties going on. But then the crash happened, the Great Recession. In 2007, so I went out on my own from this loan officer in about March 2007, and then July of 2007, I got a real estate license, and that was just for my own personal investing. The market was still doing well here in Utah. California had already showed some signs of cracking, but we were doing all right here. And then right after I got my license, that's when everything started going downhill here in Utah. And then that's when the interesting ride happened in my life, because at that point, my whole entire real estate portfolio just started tanking, massively tanking. Part of my portfolio included a development project in the Caribbean on the island of Roatan. Some of you may have heard of that island. And we were already, I bought that, I think, in 2006. We started subdividing it, selling off pieces of land. And we had architecture and engineers involved to create a development and a condo project. And like the first few months of it went exceptionally well. And then the crash happened. And I went from a net worth that was really nice down to like negative. And when I say negative, a lot negative.
So how much money did you have invested in the Caribbean?
That's a great question. I mean, I was probably, the project, how much was I into it myself? I was probably maybe around 200,000 of my own money in it. That's a lot. Maybe 150,000, 200,000. And that's how much I had there. And then I had money involved in some other projects here in the United States, like homes and a flip that we were doing and different things. And
so in 2008, did most of those go belly up?
Oh yeah, crazy. So I lost, the negative net worth was insane. So the real estate agency that was representing us on the island went bankrupt. The next one went bankrupt. Our builder went bankrupt. He ended up fleeing the country, and he's wanted. I think he's still wanted today by Interpol for fraud stuff that he was doing, not related to our project but other projects. And then squatters moved in to occupy a portion of the development we had there, and I had to get attorneys involved from afar. And I mean, I still remember the day when I was on the island trying to deal with the squatters, and the attorney I had with me pulled a gun on one. Anyway, it was just an interesting experience. And here I am still in my 20s, but yeah, so I went negative to a high number. So my negative net worth at that point was, I don't know, probably, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars range. But my own personal feeling at that time was, because a lot of my friends were filing bankruptcies and having foreclosures and things like that, where, they were just hitting a reset button. And for whatever reason, I just felt internally for me that I'm like, okay, I think real estate values will eventually rebound, and I'm just going to try to pay off all the debts that I had. And so I survived that period of time.
Wait a minute. Now, all your friends are filing bankruptcy.
Yeah.
and you just went negative a whole bunch of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, most people would just file bankruptcy. Why did you decide that you were just going to pay it back?
I just felt like I could. I felt like was the right move for me. And I'm not, I realize their bankruptcies exist for a reason,
Right.
but for some reason I just felt like I was just gonna figure a way to pay it back.
Were you making great money at that time? Obviously, the market was upside down. You have a real estate license and a loan license, and the market had crashed.
So, in that market crash, it took my income with it. So I was struggling. I'd say I was living many months. I was having to take cash advances on credit cards. I went to my brother and borrowed $30-some odd thousand from him. And so I was just, it was a difficult time. Like I remember the day when I came out of my house and one of my neighbors across the street was getting in his car to go somewhere. And I said, "Hey, where are you headed?" He said, "Oh, I'm going to Cafe Rio. You want to go with me?" I couldn't go to that restaurant. I didn't have enough money in that $5, $6, $7, right? I'm like, I can't do that. I didn't tell him that. I just said, "No, it's okay." But I couldn't do it. I remember when my mother-in-law came once and dropped off a couple of gallons of milk one night. She was in town. She lived out of state, but she dropped off a couple of gallons of milk. And though it's interesting how those little things meant so much to me because I was, like I said, I was borrowing to get through.
Wow.
And to the point, like even when I went to I felt inspired to go get a master's degree in real estate development. And that degree cost tens of thousands of dollars. And so I'm having to finance that as well. And just thinking, where in the heck is my life going with all of this? And yes, the crash had taken out my income. So but I was still like persevering. I was not going to give up on this. I was not going to give up despite the crazy walls and challenges in front of me. I was going to persevere through this. And there's some faith elements that we may not talk about here, but there were some faith elements I was attached to that I felt internally a vision of where my life would be if I could just continue on and break through the challenging moments. And so I just did that. And I persevered until the sun rose again.
That is so crazy, Craig. That is so impactful to hear because most people throw their hands in the air. When it's hard, they throw their hands in the air and they give up. And even though you didn't have writing on the wall to say, "Hey, I'm going to be fine." In fact, in that point, you were going into more debt.
Yeah.
But yet you were still faithful enough and yet strong enough mentally to say, "I'm going to plow forward and I'm going to win and I'm going to get this." So from there, you get a master's degree in real estate development.
Yeah.
Where did you go from that?
So after I graduated with that master's degree, that would have been like probably the year 2013. And I decided to open my own real estate brokerage. I'd closed plenty of deals. I'd recognized pretty quickly, despite the challenge in the economy, that I was one of the highest producers in the brokerage I was at. And I was figuring this out. And I felt, next path naturally for me, I just felt like, let's open up a real estate brokerage. And so I did. And originally I was just going to do it primarily for myself, so I didn't have to pay fees to a broker. And, I had a friend decided to join my brokerage, and then a family member joined, and then a few other people joined, and I wasn't really trying to expand it. But fortunes turned around, and not because I opened the brokerage. It was just because there's an inevitable experience people have in life that when they work diligently enough and are honest and true to people around them, that goodness magnifies and I would say gravitates back toward you.
Completely agree.
And so that began to happen because I networked myself really well in the Masters of Real Estate Development program that I was in. And so there were builders and developers and other people moving and shaking in real estate, seeing the talents and skills I had. And so they started, I started doing a lot of deals with these people. And so my fortunes changed financially in a quick way. And I began to rebound out of this very dark moment, which was 5 years of darkness, to the point where I just got to say briefly, I remember taking a commission check during that dark window and taking a commission check to the bank, went up to the teller. It was of a size that was large enough the teller couldn't just cash it himself, so he had to go get the bank manager. She came up and she said, do I know you? And then she said, should I know you? And then she pulls up my bank account, and it was obviously nothing in the bank account. She's like, and then she audibly said, and she just signed it and just walked off like, this guy's a nobody. And I promised myself at that day, said, I'm going to force this bank manager to get up off her seat every single time I come into this branch, and I'm going to make it happen a lot. And I did.
That's awesome.
It was one of those motivating things that I said, that caused me to just work harder and caused her to get out of her seat a lot because I kept coming back with more and more checks until she got to know me. And anyway, but so that master's of real estate development degree really did help me because it networked me into a lot of people. I started even doing even more deals. And then the market started coming back. We're not working on short sales anymore that we're taking months and months and months to complete at half the commission you would normally get. And suddenly we have a rebounding happen. And suddenly I'm closing dozens of deals in a year. And then that dozens becomes dozens and dozens more. And you fast forward a handful of years and I'm closing 60 deals a year consistently and 70 and get upwards of 80. And, life just starts taking off, and the financial fortunes began to change. And anyway, I felt blessed. And the perseverance paid off at that point.
That's incredible. So what led you to where you're at right now? You have your own brokerage. You're doing well. You're selling a lot of real estate. You've got, how many agents were in your brokerage at that time?
So again, I wasn't really trying to expand that. And so I only had like 16.
Great. That's a good group.
And it was just friends and family that were joining, and we're just slinging real estate deals together. And then that's when you ended up approaching me at the very, very end of 2021, and you said, Craig, hey, I want to open a real estate brokerage. You want to come be my broker? And I told you, now that thanks for calling. Start calling other people because I'm happy doing my own thing. I'm running my own show. And I thought about it a few more days and then decided that we should meet. And then out of that meeting came a partnership that was great. But for me, the thing that really motivated me to move the direction we are today, it's not money. For me, it's about influence. And I had consciously been thinking in the year before you and I met, I had consciously been thinking about what can I do to expand my influence on society? What can I do to help other people? And when you called, which would have been, I think I can remember the date, probably December 29th or 8th or 9th of 2001, or 2020, or I guess 2020. I'm getting my years off. And the thing that was going through my mind in the 2 or 3 days that ensued before I called you back, or, we had our initial discussion before I called you, said, hey, let's meet, was, Craig, this is an avenue for you to influence other people. You need to stop running a virtual brokerage where you're just in your basement running a good show, but just running a show from your basement. And you need to step up, put your big boy pants on, and help other people. Like, you have some things that you have learned that you need to share, because life is a lot more than just about you. It's about everybody else. And really, Dwayne, at the end of my life, the success that I have will be measured by the number of people that come to my funeral. And that's not going to be anything having to do with money, but everything with how will have been able to teach them and uplift them in their lives. And the joy I find in life is from that, seeing someone go from where I was, that struggling individual, to where prosperity happens.
And that's the main reason we sought you out, Craig, is you've got so many qualities and talents, and there's a lot of things that you offer and have knowledge about and experiences you've had that have built our brokerage to where it's at and the agents where they're at today. And you've changed lives here already. So we're excited to have, Craig here with us and go through this real estate show with us. Click on the link below and watch some of the stuff that we're doing, and look forward to working with you guys in the near future.